Andy, Brian, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for the time
Thank
to
you.
chat with you. I really do appreciate it. Lost Angel
Likewise.
is a beautiful, beautiful film.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, now I'm not super familiar with the folk scene of the 60s and 70s. But so the name Judy Sill is new to me. But I mean, that's sort of the appropriate thing of the title, I suppose. That's kind of the point in many ways. So start for you both. How did you get involved with the film? What is it that made you want to tell Judy's story?
I would say it started with the Old Gray Whistle Test video of Judy performing the kiss
Hmm.
that just slayed me. If you go online and read the comment section of that, you'll see what I mean. That was my reaction in 2011 when I first saw it. And then Brian, I showed it soon after that, and he had the same reaction. And he had finished a film about a documentary, and a friend of his said, you should make your next film about Judy Sill, and was shocked that Brian even knew who she was, but I had just shown him that video. And within a day, we were working on the film. This is 9 years ago, by the way.
Hmm.
But the more we dug into her story and her background, it just became obvious that this was a very compelling story. And it just took that long to make because we had to get all the archival materials, and we were doing it in fits and starts and self-funding. So it just took a while.
Yeah, I mean, her story is, I mean, it's wild. I mean, just even from the early years and just my goodness, you hear stories when you hear a singer and you say they've got a story to tell. She definitely did. So why is she a lost angel?
To me, well, there's the play on LA. So she was born in LA and died in LA,
Mm,
not far from where she was born. And so much of her work is spiritual in nature and sort of treading the line between good and evil in her own life and her own the ridge she walked down along. I think she was trying to be on the more angelic side. And
mm.
so if the film has a perspective, I would say it's sort of, acknowledging that aspect of her. And that's a good question, though. I'm gonna have to fine tune the response because I have to think about it. I do no, I mean, it's a really good question. Brian, what do you think?
Well, it's fascinating because, she definitely had lost elements about her, and yet she was also devoted to her music and was writing even in the worst part of her addiction toward the end of her life. She was daily writing songs and working and honoring her muse. She was writing right up until the last week of her life. And she's a fascinating case because we kind of have to come to some kind of answer about certain things about life. Are
I
we
think
doing our best? How do we honor the gifts we're given? And she forces us to answer those questions. And the deeper we got into her life, we felt like even with all the pain, all of that she comes out as a kind of deeply inspiring, if flawed figure, that we can all derive strength from.
who is very upfront about her flaws and whose battles were largely spiritual. I'm trying to expand a little on the angel thing, but I think if you read her journals, it was a real struggle. It was a religious struggle for her. She was searching she was a Buddhist at one point. She was that considering Islam, she was looking, Rosicrucianism, she was absolutely looking for a spiritual guide, something spiritually to guide her because of her struggles.
And she
So
was looking,
that's what angel means, I
yeah.
think.
And she was looking for that in her music as well. I mean, the goal, she writes it in her journal, achieve the union. I
Yeah.
mean, these were songs that have a deep
Yeah.
mission to them without ever being pedantic or boring. an incredible achievement, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, she's fascinating. I mean, and you hear throughout the film, you hear these different from her journals, different conversations, and I love that you're talking about this tension, because there really is this spiritual quest going on within her work, and yet it keeps coming up. I don't know if you guys can answer this, because I mean, how can you answer a question like this? But the conversations about spirituality and sexuality keep coming up throughout this film, and I just wondered what your perspectives were on that in her, and coming at what you've discovered in her.
Well, Judy was drawn to music as a 3-year-old when she went to her father Bud's bar in Oakland and tried to harmonize with herself, as she put it, on the piano.
Mhm.
And, there were people, as she said, fighting and puking all around her. And she's this little kid at a piano trying to kind of find, some higher harmony, and I think she really just kind of went about her life that way. I mean, it was all in her from a very young age, and it just kind of manifested and grew.
And she recognized that if she was going to be saved, it was going to be through music. That in an essential way, music was her religion, while she was trying to adhere it to some other teachings, perhaps. Really, it was music. And I think a lot of us who are not necessarily religious, would say that music is the closest to religion they get.
Yep.
And so in a very fundamental way, that was true for her early on.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear her crying out, in lament prayers while she's struggling with her drug addiction, with all her personal issues. As you hear these things, it's like, please God, help me, save me. It's and that's very interesting. I like at one point, I forget who it is. Somebody in the film describes it as heart food. The music is heart food.
Yeah.
Well, that was the name of her second album, but that was
that was her second album. Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Jackson says heart food. That's exactly what it is. Why didn't that nourish her? Why didn't that keep her?
Yeah.
He also went on to say, we didn't include it in the film, but Jackson kind of postulated, what might it have meant if Judy found a core group of musicians, kind of her backup band, if you will, and what support that might have given her. It's a fascinating question to ponder.
She had a lot of bad luck at the end, and not the same resources to help that people would have now.
Yeah.
So it's a tragedy in many ways, but in it's also, as I think we mentioned, she was working till the end. She was writing songs until, right before she died. So she was still plugging away, hoping it would change,
I mean, Judy was not ultimately a downer. Her motto was onwards and upwards, fuck the odds.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, and having said that, that's one of the things that I was thinking about this particular film. I mean, we're talking about the sad story of Judy right now. We have been, because it's a very tragic story in a lot of ways. But I'd also wondered about the genius of Judy. You put that right in the title, The Genius of Judee Sill.
Yeah.
What is the genius of Judy that sets her apart from that era?
I think just the profound,
go ahead,
just the profound depth and breadth of her musical chops.
Yep.
That she was able to orchestrate and arrange and have in her mind, how the fourth violins are going to sound in the second stanza. I mean, just that ability, it's kind of awe-inspiring. And as Linda Ronstadt says in the film, the only other person on the scene who had that was Brian Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all self-taught too. So she was born with that gift. She had perfect pitch. She just had musical chops, and it made her different from her contemporaries, who acknowledged her. Many of them acknowledged her as the most talented amongst them because of those.
And her life experience separates her from almost everyone, right? I mean, she had so much trauma and hardship early in her life, and was able to kind of formulate all that into a muse that like wrote songs that are just purely Judy and, you know, one of a kind.
Yeah,
Kind of this perfect combination of like, you know, life in the gutter and her talent in the stars, and she can write about everything in between, you know.
oh, I love that. Yeah, that's a
Yeah, me
very,
too.
yeah,
I like
I
that
hadn't
too.
thought of it that way.
I'm going to say it next time.
It's fair. Because this is who she seems to have been, is this woman who was struggling to get by every day, but had this incredible desire and connection for something deeper and more.
100%. That's exactly right. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
And that's inspiring. As tragic as it is, that's actually pretty inspiring. To me, it is, because she was fighting. She just had a bad drug addiction, you know, that was playing with fire. But she was just not giving up. It was listed as suicide because that's what they listed drug overdoses as in those days, but I don't think it was. I think she knew it could happen probably, but you know, was not trying to die.
Yeah.
And Steve, let's remember that she lived in a time when the phrase recovery wasn't even in popular culture.
Right.
You know, it was truly was a different time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is absolutely right. We're looking at it was the transition from the 60s to the 70s.
Yeah.
Was it the late 60s? Was it? Yeah, it was.
Yeah, she died in 79, but
She died in
yes,
79.
soon after that it became Betty Ford, and you know, that was after. You know? I mean, well, Betty Ford might have been in the 70s, but it was just wasn't the same.
No.
It wasn't the same set of options.
No, certainly not with the support systems, and the way we view mental health issues now is, you know, 1,000% different in 360 and 360 again. You know, just talking about her music a minute here, and I realize this is a tough question to answer because this isn't both of you, but the second album, I think it was the second album, the one that didn't take off. The film deals a lot with that, and it talks about David Geffen, and it talks about some of the controversies there. But one of the comments that is made that I thought was really, really interesting was, if I get it here, the audience loves what the audience loves. So we have this young woman who is, you know, her name's on a billboard. She sits outside and watches her name on a billboard, which is a whole other area of conversation, but has achieved this fame, and then just the second album doesn't resonate. I was wondering if you had any insight as to why you think that happened. Was it purely the stuff behind the scenes, in your opinion, or was it that she was saying something that the fans were not saying anymore?
That's a really good question. I would say less behind the scenes, more didn't resonate with the time.
Yeah. It's like
And I think that was very painful to her. Very painful. She's arguably more well-known now than she ever was in her lifetime. She died. There was no obit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Well, it's just like Linda Ronstadt says in the film, there's nobody out to get her. She just didn't write something that would have resonated in that culture at that particular time. And it's a shame, you know, and it is a shame. But, you know, I really think that there needs to be space for films like ours that are kind of a corrective to any like mistake that pop culture may have made, you know, decades ago, you know, because like we are, you know, it's not like, you know, popular taste can be, you know, it's not foolproof. Mistakes are made and people need to be rediscovered.
She deserves it for sure. Yeah. I mean, as a fan, I'm saying that, not as the maker of this, co-maker of this film.
Well, absolutely. It's sad in some ways that so long after her death, that almost you gentlemen have the chance to tell her story. It's like now a lot of it's in her own words, absolutely, but I mean it's like, oh my goodness, you know, this is a story that disappeared. just as we start to wrap up, I'm just wondering from your perspective, what do you hope audiences take away from the film?
I hope they're inspired by Judy and her struggles and her triumphs, and I hope that they kind of have an elevated perspective on how hard she worked, how deep she dug, and that she was writing and never gave up on her music. And I hope also that maybe she inspires people to perhaps look at their own lives and apply that wonderful phrase that she sings at the end of the film, however we are is okay. You know, there's a kind of level of self-acceptance and love that I think is profound and not in a kind of lazy way, hey, whatever you do is okay, but the kind of self-acceptance and love that actually inspires us to dig deeper and kind of do better.
Well said, Brian.
Thank you.
Well, it's absolutely, I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate the chance to chat with you. Thank you guys both. I'm sorry, I realized I just did, Andy, did I just cut you off?
No, not at all. Not at
Okay.
all. Brian spoke for me there as well.
Steve, you asked great questions.
Yeah,
so,
thank you.
So touching
Thank
to,
you.
you know, kind of feel like he gets it.
Yes,
I appreciate that.
that's
Thank you
nice.
so much. I wish you guys the best. The film premiere is DOC NYC. Is that where you guys are premiering?
Yes, on Sunday, yes.
Wonderful.
Sunday, and then another screening on the 14th, the day after.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both, and I wish you the best. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.